Dead by Daylight has given us a solid roster of baddies and ne'er-do-wells to hunt down and brutalise our friends with. But being the dissatisfied and impatient gamers that we are, we always want more. So, we're going to plough through some killers from film, TV and games that we'd love to see introduced to the title. These are 6 killers in 6 minutes. Let's go. We're not even going to dance around our first pick. Fans have been clamouring for a Five Nights at Freddy's appearance in Dead by Daylight for as long as I can remember. Well, it's got to be about time now, right? And who best to represent one franchise and another than the godfather of jump scares, Springtrap. This rusted, busted up animatronic has been the fuel of nightmares in his own franchise, so there's no doubt he'd be right at home harassing survivors. Gameplay-wise, his whole possession/phantom attack dealio could play well into the game, impairing his victims both visually and audibly before ambushing them and dragging them off to their doom. It really would work well, wouldn't it? There's few horror icons as iconic as the Xenomorph, H.R. Giger's most recognisable creation, and that guy was the king of conjuring up grotesque aberrations. I don't think there's a single player who wouldn't feel instant dread knowing there's a 10-foot, 300-pound mass of pain and suffering stalking their every move. It's a step away from traditional horrors and slashers and into the world of sci-fi, but wouldn't that just work? Picture it, new maps inspired by the Nostromo, music with the terrible twang of an 80s space horror flick. Little tweaks that take the game off the ground and into the stars. It could really be something special. And if there's one ravenous, unrelenting monster to make it happen, well, it's got to be the Xenomorph. So Dead by Daylight obviously loves its slasher movie icons, so why not add to that with one of the best and storied horror flicks around? Take centre stage, Candyman. He fits in perfectly with some of the roster already in the game. Equal parts supernatural, equal parts maniacal killer. He's got an elaborate, if somewhat tragic background, an air of mystery and an unnerving sense of brutality. He also possesses something that no one else in the game has. That's right, a load of bees. There are so many possibilities for gameplay mechanics when you have so many bees. It's a match made in heaven, and before you know it, you'll have players fleeing for their lives, echoing Nick Cage. Not the bees!
No, not the bees!
Not the bees!
Not the bees! Ah!
Now, a terrifying fictional serial killer with a most unthreatening name, the Tooth Fairy. Yes? Hold your gasps, please. Well, he's also known by a slightly more menacing title, the Great Red Dragon. Now that's more like it. So he was the chief bad guy in Red Dragon from the film and book universe revolving around Hannibal, the cannibal. So the Tooth Fairy, and I know you're still not sold on the name, is a ruthless and meticulous murderer who'll violently kill his victims and then rearrange them into gruesome and grotesque figures, often taking a piece of them home to act as a trophy. He does all this to appease his alter ego, the Great Red Dragon, believing that each act will get him closer to transforming its monstrous visage. Yeah, the Tooth Fairy doesn't seem so silly now, does he? He's an elaborate, sickening and intriguing character whose brutality rivals the sickest killers already on the game's roster. I think he'd be right at home, and I think it'd be a unique addition. It's no secret that Resident Evil DLCs so far have done tremendously well. Albert Wesker and Nemesis are right at home alongside the game's other sordid killers, so why not add more? You could go with Jack Baker, Petoras Mendez, William Birkin. Cool, imagine that. That'd be good, wouldn't it? But on second thoughts, if they introduce a new Resi villain, I'd want them to introduce Lady Dimitrescu, mainly because she's just different. She's not monstrous or unsettling. Hell, you'd even be forgiven for thinking she's rather charming. But that thought would ultimately be your downfall. I can see matches with her playing out differently. Less about brutal jump scares, more about war of attrition and mind games. Move the game away from a slasher onto a psychological horror. I really think that could work. The question I keep asking myself when it comes to Dead by Daylight killers is about vampires. Where are all the vampires? The game has steered firmly off into supernatural territory. Isn't it about time to get a few bloodsuckers in? Granted, most vampires are from dusty old books. Dracula, how boring. No, let's get something more modern, exciting and a bit of a curveball. The Master from the Strain. For those unfamiliar, the strain is all about an ancient super vampire who wants to do what all vampires want to do. Take over the world, use all of us as little blood Capri Suns. His abilities include super strength, surprising speed, possession, and the ability to spit horrible flesh-burrowing parasite worms. They'll wiggle up inside you and turn you into a vampire zombie. All very unsettling. He's got plenty of tricks up his sleeve that'll translate to in-game abilities. And it's just a bit more interesting than the old bloodsucker stereotypes. It also pays homage to the best mediocre horror series in recent memory. And those are 6 killers we'd like to see in Dead by Daylight. Granted, some are more realistic than others, but with enough thought, we reckon any one of them can make it work. Let us know which you think is the most likely and your best predictions of who you reckon will be hunting us down and turning us into mincemeat in the not so distant future.